Welcome to the Messenger Reveals. I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you are pleased to do. Welcome back to the Messenger Reveals, where we are continuing our series on the secrets of the kingdom and doing the final edition of our heart presentation. With me, as always, is my brother Patrick. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm good, man. Happy to be back and finishing up this series today and moving on to the next one.
Absolutely.
A little bit of slight adjustment because I actually started my normal schedule today, so I get to run home from work and hop right on here. So
I know I grabbed a little tiny bite to eat. I won't eat dinner until after the stream, but
I'm here.
it's been busy. But yeah, we wrapped up our volleyball season, so I'll have some more free time
Yeah,
coming up.
how'd it go for you?
It went well. We won our first game. We were the number 9 seed. We beat the 8 seed in straight sets, and then we played the number 1 seed the second match of the tournament in the quarterfinals, and we lost to them. We beat them the first set, and then we had lost to them the second and third set, and they were undefeated all year. They hadn't lost a set all year, so it was pretty exciting winning that first set and having a chance to defeat them in the quarterfinals, but didn't go that way. They went on, won in straight sets against everybody else, and won the tournament. But it was good. Our girls played hard. They worked hard all year. It was fun coaching again. It was really, really cool.
Good.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. I celebrated. So me and my sister are exactly 5 years and 1 week apart. So I texted her last week and I said, let's just celebrate our birthdays together. We met up on Sunday and got lunch, and then I gave her gift, and then she got me a new Apple Watch. So
Wow, nice.
yeah, so that's what we did Sunday, and then Saturday. What did I do Saturday? I know I did something, but I can't remember what it is. I don't remember, but I know I did something Saturday. Oh, we saw Endgame Saturday. That's right.
Nice. What'd you think about
So
Endgame?
I thought it was all right. I liked Infinity War more.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to having that
Yeah.
conversation.
So I know
Um,
next Breakfast Brothers we'll talk about it.
yeah, a week
But
from Saturday. Let's plan on at least a good 2 hour in
yeah,
delving to Endgame.
yes. So,
But
but yeah, me and Bree just kind of hung out all Saturday. Um, and yeah, that's about it.
yeah, and just if people didn't hear me last week, I thought it was phenomenal. I saw it the weekend prior to this one, and I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was the best out of all the movies. But again, it comes down to when it comes to movies, it's taste and preference. Patrick and I talk it all about the time. When it comes to your taste in things or your appreciation of things, it's all very subjective, and there's no point in you arguing. I think it'd be fun just to understand his perspective. Like, what was he disappointed about? What do you like to see? And we don't want to give any spoilers away, so we're not going to get into it. But I'm curious, and I'm sure he's curious what I have to say. So we're gonna mash some thoughts and ideas on Saturday. It'll be fun.
It'll be a fun conversation on Saturday to talk about the end game perspective.
Yeah,
But
but
anyway,
so now that volleyball's done, I got an extra 12 hours a week in my life, and trying to decide how I can best put those hours to use to help my wife out, because I know between the show and between volleyball and between work and all the other things that we do, we don't get as much time together, and she's probably exhausted and worn out with those twins and toddlers. So I
absolutely.
definitely need to allocate. Like last night, I spent time out in the living room making sure I was helping out and doing those type of things. So need to continue
Good,
to do that.
good. I'm happy for you. I know I had called and talked to you maybe about a month ago now about, I was potentially looking at getting a second job just to, not really struggling financially, but just to
Hmm.
have some cash around. I ended up deciding not to go through with that. Bree is finished up with school for the summer now, and so we decided to, like, our whole lives together have been, one of us has been busy, and I was like, we finally have this opportunity to be together where she's not in school, and I've got a great job where I only need to work one job, so
Yeah,
we can invest that time back into our relationship now. So
that's
I
good.
definitely get that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, some of it I think that mine I need to get back into exercise, and I've let my weight go way too long. let myself go way too long. So I think I'm going to dedicate some of those hours to either a gym or getting into doing something, either going swimming or something to get myself back in, because I know I'm less than 2 years from 50, and it's just going to get worse and worse to, be able to keep my metabolism up, to keep my body in shape and take care
Right.
of it. So I'm in the end game now. so I need to take care of myself in the end game if I want to be around for my kids mid game.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm happy for you. If you ever want to come run around on a summer morning on a field, I know a guy you can hang out with.
Is his name Patrick the Heretic?
Yes.
Chasing you with a ball would be like you trying to hit me in the face with a boxing glove.
Yeah.
A measure in futility.
Yes, exactly.
No, but I think that would be. We'll figure out something like that. But they get together to have your young, motivated self motivate me. So
That's right. I'm always down to motivate somebody to do some sort of physical activity because yeah, it's super important. I
it
mean,
is. It's important for our well being. It's cognitively, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Taking care of our bodies is definitely something that if we don't, it can impair those other four processes, which we'll see when we get into it. How do we really improve the processes within our heart? And again, our
sure.
heart's just an idiom for our internal being, our innermost genuine being. And we've been talking over the last couple parts of this series of what the heart is, why it's important, and what are those four internal processes that make up and constitute those interactions within us that determine how and why we act and behave the way we have. And I like that how we've taken our time, and I know you've said that, like how we've taken our time really
Yeah.
through this series this time and really get more in depth with it. You're sharing thoughts and perspectives and ideas based on your experience and applying it, and then that's been really good. Now, hope we keep that up over this last part. And if there's a part four, we'll do a part four. But I think we'll probably wrap up with this.
I think today will probably be the wrap up, but I agree. Like, I just really love that. The first time we went through this, we were just getting our feet wet in the YouTube world, and
Mm-hmm.
we were involved in different communities at that time. So I know I sort of watched certain things I said just because of the communities we're involved in, but now we're like, you know what? We got our truth to share, and we just got to share it, and we're just much more laid back now, and just say what we need to say. And it's just, I think this has been really awesome. So I'm excited for the remaining series to continue on,
Yep.
and as we really impact that. So yeah, with that, I think we can get started with the what I imagine will probably be the final part of this, but we'll see at the end.
Time will tell. Time will tell. All right, so let's get into this next slide. So we're going to talk about the biological process of the heart. And again, there's four internal processes that drive who and what you are on the inside. And the better you understand what those four processes are and how to change and make them more healthy in their nature, the more your inner being is going to be spirit rather than flesh.
Sure.
So this includes our intellect, our memory, hormones, neurotransmitter, and physiological needs. And with the I'm sorry, we'll go back to this. With your intellect, you're pretty much as smart as you're going to be. Your intelligence is going to be what it is, peaked around 25 years old. It's going to stay steady, may increase slightly till 50, and then at 50 it's potentially going to start to decline, and that's just the way life goes. Your memory is tied to intellect, but it's not solely in intellect, because people who have neurotransmitter issues, physiological issues, or even mental illness or mental disorder can have their memories impacted or even change where they're stored at in the brain. Like there's people with ADHD who aren't storing a lot of their episodic memories in their prefrontal cortex. They're actually storing them in their occipital lobe and their temporal lobe, and storing them in other areas of the brain, just because of the dysfunction that's going on with the brain. And we have MRI studies to be able to show how those things are incorrectly or unhealthily being stored. But with proper medication to correct those neurotransmitters, to correct those issues, we've seen the brain repair and be malleable and heal itself, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was doing some research on sort of like how neurotransmitters work, and obviously the things they go into is like, here's how cocaine affects the brain and stuff. It's really cool how we've like been able to figure out how to like time release and play with those chemicals for people who lack in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And they like, because like basically cocaine comes in, it just basically blocks your reuptake, but they have abilities to like, depending on what pill you take, to I guess, time release that. And I'm speaking as a layman here because I
No,
don't,
sure.
but time release those chemicals and reuptake factors, and that's just kind of baffles my mind that we were able to figure that out.
When anytime there's money involved, they're going to figure out a solution for it. And psychopharmacology is $1 billion a year industry. So,
Pharmacology in general is a huge industry. I've my mom works healthcare, and she's got some stories about how pharmaceutical companies are, yeah, there's some sketchy people there.
of course, yeah, it's all about money. And like I always said, when you look at medication of any type, medication's like a key, and your brain has a bunch of different locks in it. Your body has a bunch of different locks in it with your hormones, and the pill that you take may only open up the locks in 65-70% of the people who take it. So that's why medication doesn't always work for everybody, and they have to actually switch medications, and then they have to switch the level of dosage to get the right amount of either too much, to adding more neurotransmitter, or taking away and blocking the reuptake of it, or increasing the reuptake of it, so that it's not prevalent in the brain. So they're trying to moderate it, and they don't have an MRI that can actually show you where you're at with your levels or your deficiencies. So again, you have to work with a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor or a psychiatrist over a period of time to get those dosages and the right medication working for your body and brain to be able to have an effective things for things that are dysfunctional.
Right. And I really like that every time we talk about this, you make time to mention that point because I know like there's a lot of stigma about, and don't get me wrong, there's some sketchy people in the pharmaceutical industry that, I mean, they've got some cures for some stuff, but they just charge an arm and a leg for it that the general masses don't have the ability to get to it. That happens. But for the most part, like, especially when it comes to your brain and um, psychological drugs, we just don't know enough about the brain currently to say like, yep, this person needs this exact thing and this exact dosage. Like we're all so unique in how our brain does what it does that it's kind of a guessing game. And
It is.
it's not this evil thing. It's just we just don't know enough.
Yeah, and I think it's more the Christian community that has that negative stigma
Sure.
towards psychopharmaceuticals and saying, "Oh, look at that's pharmakia and that's forbidden in the Bible and it's this and it's like what they were talking about 2,500 to 3,000 years ago in the Old Testament has nothing to do with today's medical model. They didn't
Right.
have anything close to those things. They had natural herbs. They have natural ways of doing things. They didn't have chemicals affecting your body in the way. They just didn't know enough about chemistry to be able to do those things. So, what the Bible was talking about was very different than what we are dealing with today and what's approved by our Food and Drug Administration and having those things tested before they're even given to people. And they always talk about the side effects because side effects occur when the pill metabolizes through your liver. So
Mhm.
as the pill metabolizes the effects of it, it changes and produces metabolites. And these metabolites are, quote, offset keys that the original key wasn't intended for, and they can affect other parts of your body or brain. So that's why it says may cause, may cause, may cause, because again, it's producing a bunch of different keys as it metabolizes through your liver, and those other tiny little keys may open and unlock or not open and unlock other things in parts of your internal system. That's why some people have side effects, other people don't.
Right.
So, it involves the effects of diet, medication, substance, supplements, and exercise. And again, this is all the biological process. It comprises any brain abnormalities, injuries, and other physical impairments within our bodies. So Paul described the biological in this way. He said, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's spirit, or your well-being, dwells in your midst within you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy the person, for God's temple is sacred and you together are that temple." And again, it's not God coming down and breaking your body up and cursing you and causing these things. It's talking about if you don't take care of your biology, it's going to self-destruct.
Right.
Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you? Again, the Holy Spirit is that part of your inner being that is healthy. Holy meaning that's set apart. The Spirit is the part of your inner heart or body that is healthy in its nature. Whom you have received from God, which means that God was the supreme being. You are becoming a healthy being in the likeness and image of God. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So becoming biologically healthy. You got to get proper sleep. And sleep is one of the physiological needs that you need. If you don't get it, you will either die or your body will force you to shut down. For most adults, 7.5 or 9 hours each night in 90-minute increments is going to be this. What I mean by that is if you know you need to wake up at 6 in the morning, you need to count backwards every 90-minute increments to see how many, quote, sleep cycles you're going to get through. And you always want to go to bed about 15 minutes prior to a 90-minute increment. So you're giving yourself 15 minutes to fall asleep, and then you're going to wake up in a 90-minute increment. So that's either 90 minutes, 3 hours, 4.5 hours, 6 hours, 7.5 hours, 9, 10.5. If you're getting sleep in between those, like if it's better to get 7.5 hours of sleep than 8.5. It's better to get 9 hours of sleep than 10 hours. It's better to get 6 hours of sleep than 7 hours of sleep, because that way you're waking up in stage 1 sleep and you're going to be less lethargic and less exhausted. So again, I tell people, go to bed 90-minute increments from when you plan to wake up, and give yourself about a 10 to even add 10 to 15 minutes to that so you can be able to fall asleep. You want it to be a comfortable environment, which means, like for me, I sleep in the nude. It's the most comfortable. I don't have anything restricting, like any elastic, any bands, anything. That's the best way. You want to be comfortable. You want it to be cool, so the temperature in your house should drop. And the reason for this is your body temperature drops while you're sleeping. So if your body temperature drops and you leave your house with the same stuff, your body's going to feel hotter. So because it's going to, as the body temperature drops, the air in the room is going to feel warmer. So if you don't have the air temperature around you drop, you're going to feel more hot, and then that's going to keep you from getting proper sleep. You want all ambient light gone, so as much darkness, blocking out windows with shades or blankets is always going to be healthier. And if you have annoying ticks or creeps, or you got pets that are making noise, having some type of white noise like a fan or a white noise machine, or even ambient sound that's not annoying to you, can help you as well stay asleep.
Yeah. Sleep conversation hugely important. It's amazing how much it actually helps, because when I first started, like one of the first things I started on was regulating my sleep. And it changes your entire life if you get proper sleep. It's the first thing I'll tell anybody, that even little bits of truth that I'm sharing with is like, how's your sleep? And a lot of times people, and especially in America, we're in a very go, go, go world. Well, the Western world's very go, go, go. We forget about sleep. And if you have kids, like you've got two twins, like there's a lot of things that can affect that. But to the best of your ability, like work on your sleep, start there, because it's a great place to like easily eliminate a variable to lead away from being irritable or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it increases irritability. It makes you more lethargic. It slows down your intellect. It impacts your ability to concentrate and pay attention. So you can look up all the negative effects of sleep deprivation. So these are the ways that you get adequate and healthy sleep. Healthy diet. A healthy diet of non-processed proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And I put it 20-65-15 because in most diets, which means you're not dieting trying to lose weight, but you're trying to have a healthy diet, you want a ratio of 20% proteins, 65% carbohydrates, and 15% fats. And of those 65% carbohydrates, you don't want them to come from simple sugars, which are like fruit juices or pure sugar cane, because that's going to be unhealthy. You don't want to be racking up candy as 65% of your carbohydrate intake. You want those things to come from vegetables and starches and grains primarily. But also, yes, you factor in and get your fruits in. Just don't make it a pure fruit diet, because that's, again, a lot of simple sugars, and that's going to add way too much calories for carbohydrates. Your fats and proteins are a good, healthy balance. Yes, you want fat in your diet. I know a lot of people are doing Atkins and South Beach and ketogenic diets. Make sure you're working with a medical doctor or somebody that's a professional in the field before you get nuts on ketogenic and you increase your fat content, almost eliminate your carbohydrates, and increase your proteins a little bit. Because if you do, you can end up damaging your liver and other parts of your internal nature. So be very careful when going on these diets that you consult a medical professional for those things. Healthy hormones and neurotransmitters. And again, work with professional doctors and counselors, psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, when you're dealing with things with hormone or neurotransmitter imbalances. Because yes, psychotropic medication can help with some things that you're dealing with, but in a lot of cases, it's not a permanent thing. It might be a temporary thing to get your biology restabilized so that you can work on and improve your cognitive and emotional and experiential processes that are within you. So again, seek out professional counselors, have those things tested, talk about what your symptoms are, some of the things that you're struggling with, and be as open and honest with those professionals as you can. Because the more information that you provide to them, the better their diagnosis and treatment is going to be for you. Hygiene, taking care of yourself. Everybody's heard cleanliness is next to godliness. Well, the reality is that if you don't take care of yourself, then you're opening up the doors for virus and bacterial type infections to get into your body. So, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, washing your hair, taking care of your body, having clean clothes, having a clean house, having clean dishes, all those things matter. If you don't take care of your hygiene and it starts impacting other things, you're going to become more sick. And if you're sick, your body breaks down, affects the ways that you think, your reason, and you feel. So again, take care of yourself hygiene-wise. And exercise. Of course, walking, swimming, hiking, jogging, sports, going to a gym. Those things are all healthy ways to sit there and build up your cardiovascular and also help improve your overall well-being. If you don't take care of your biology, it's going to have an impact on the cognitive, the experiential, and the emotional. Just like the cognitive can impact all three, so can the biology. And a lot of people skip out on the biology. I've skipped out on the biology. I mean, I do very well cognitively, experientially, and emotionally, but sometimes I can get irritated or I can get frustrated or, I can feel like I just don't want to hang around with people sometimes because I'm biologically drained. So again, all these things can impact anybody at any time, no matter how much you know.
And Jeff Pasick has a question for you. So what's your opinion on getting super duper high? Not being sarcastic, LOL.
Well, I mean, like if you're talking about smoking marijuana basically affects two things. It affects serotonin levels and it affects dopamine within the brain. So you're flooding your brain with excess dopamine. It impairs the physiological motor functions of your body. So certainly don't operate heavy equipment or drive. People think, oh, I can drive better when I'm high. Well, if you're an anxious wreck, perhaps it might help a tiny bit, but otherwise it's impairing and slowing down your ability to brake, make decisions. But also, like smoking marijuana also has proven in neurological and MRI studies, it improves creativity. It opens up more access to the right side of your brain. It impairs more logic and critical thought and gets more into the creative side. So I know that people who are artists or people who are musicians or people who are more creative in their nature, it opens up those pathways. So again, everything that we can or want to do in life is about use rather than abuse and it being something that I need because my life sucks so bad because of anxiety, depression, anger, bitterness, resentment. If you're using something to escape from the things that you can't process through cognitively, experientially, and emotionally in a healthy way, could it be a temporary thing that helps you survive? Of course. But should it be the thing that you have to continue to go to and be dependent on? Absolutely not, because that's not freedom. So I guess that would be my best response to Jeff. And thank you for the question, Jeff.
Yeah. And then I don't know
What?
if this is an actual question, but I'll ask anyways. Atheist rationale was, what do you think about Yeah, DMT, man.
What's DMT?
No idea. If you want to clarify that, we'll definitely answer that.
Yeah, I don't know what DMT is. Atheist rationale. So if you have if you can clarify that for me, I'll be happy to answer your question. Let's go ahead and move on to cognitive processes of the heart. So this is your knowledge, beliefs, and ignorance comprise the cognitive processes. It's your understanding, thinking, and reasoning within your internal being. Knowledge I've defined many times as what you know, what you can prove. It's your provable truths in life. So if you say, I know something, you have to be able to prove it with concrete evidence. If your beliefs are going to be your assumed truths, and this is what you hold to be true in your inner being, but you don't have enough evidence to support it, nor has there been any evidence given to you that would reject what that belief is. So again, that's how I differentiate those two things. I know some philosophers have a different viewpoint. I don't care. This is a better way to understand the difference between what we know and what we believe. This includes our morals, our values, and our ethics. I'm sorry, Patrick. What was that, bud?
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I want to try and pronounce that. He said it was a joke anyways, hence the quotation marks. All right, we'll move on then. So just based off Just the on the knowledge and beliefs thing, like perhaps we'll get into this a little bit more on the next slide, but I know I
I
found
think
a
he's talking
lot.
about methamphetamine, and that would be, I think that's ecstasy is what it is. I definitely wouldn't recommend anybody use any type of methamphetamines. And I think that's what with that dimethamphetamine that he's talking about. I think it's ecstasy. I could be wrong, but it's been a long time since I took my psychopharmacology class. But I believe he's talking about ecstasy.
Gotcha. So
Moving
just
on.
yeah, just on the knowledge and beliefs, like I found on just the belief and the thing, like through a lot of just reflecting and trying to go through of like, okay, what do I actually know? And I think it was is it Socrates or some philosophers? I don't know the name, but basically you go through a process of kind of continually asking yourself a question like, okay, a bird has legs. Okay, well, what else has legs? And like narrow it down that way. Like we've come to find out there's a whole lot of stuff that we just have that is a belief rather than knowledge. Like we believe it to be true based on the experiences we've had. And I think a lot of times we find that people take their beliefs and just think that they're knowledge or think that it's knowledge. And it's better just to call it a belief when you can't prove something. And it's okay to hold a bunch of different beliefs. That's where unpacking and talking about our beliefs really comes into play.
Right. I think we clarify it that way just so that we can have better communication as well. I'm just responding to Jeff in the comments. So, again, our beliefs and our knowledge make up our morals, our values, and our ethics that are very subjective in their nature. We receive them from authority figures in our lives, and we receive them through other models, through experience with other human beings. It includes our perception, patterns, and intents. And Jesus discussed the cognitive when he said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Because everything that he modeled and everything that he displayed was a healthy state of being. And he was telling his disciples, if you hold to these teachings that I give you, which is transforming your inner being to become more healthy in its nature, then you're really his disciples. And if you know this truth, the truth will set you free because you'll be free from things like anxiety, depression, bitterness, resentment, anger, rage, anything that they might have been struggling with. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, then you will know my Father as well. And again, he was exuding to them that the knowledge he received came from God or the Father, and all goodness that was part of him was part of God. Sorry, I can't keep typing and doing this stuff, so I just sent it. He replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom has been given to you, but not to them. And again, we've talked about the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom was about godly truths that transformed our inner being in a healthy way. Paul talked about the cognitive in this way. He said, so Christ himself gave the apostles and the prophets and the evangelists and pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service. Again, a lot of people just say, oh no, I just need Jesus in my Bible. I just need God in my Bible. I don't need people. And they reject the teachings and the discipleship from other people. But he said he appointed people in these capacities to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Again, this was to create a sense of community within people to be healthy and build each other up, not tear each other down like the Christian community often does. And he said of people, they are of people who are rejecting it, they are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. And again, when people, and I guess this would be very reminiscent of very ignorant, unhealthy people who don't understand truths, or they have confirmation bias saying that, nothing can be better, my life's always going to suck, things can't get better. And if they believe those things, it absolutely never is, because their confirmation bias will reject anything that's in contrary to it, and they'll only seek affirmation for what they already know. Well, I'm glad, Jeff, because from anything that I've seen from when I was doing treatment with those things will never produced anything positive. And he was talking about people using meth or LSD or anything like that. You know,
I
it's
just my own experience with back when I was like maybe 18, 19. I knew a few people who did meth, and I stayed friends with them. But I'll tell you what, when they're on it and they're kind of in their thing, it's weird to see how one thing can really change who a person is. Like when they're on it, like they're not.
well because it's changing the chemical makeup of their brain in that moment in
Yeah,
time.
I understand that now. It just at the time it was just it's like you don't even recognize the person. It's like this bizarre thing. So I would definitely bounce off what you say and don't do math, kids.
And then Peter said, as obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. And again, I think that, people think it's about choice, that you just choose to act good or you choose to act bad, or you choose to act righteous and you choose to act unrighteous. You choose to behave morally or you choose to behave immorally. And it's the inner being that dictates those things. I mean, people can try to act the right way all they want, but you squeeze the fruit long enough and then the poor behavior is going to come out because they have an inability to deal with stress, adversity, conflict, and other negative situations in a healthy way because their inner being isn't healthy.
Right. I see so much in the Christian community where they talk about, do this versus that, choose this. It's like Jesus' own teaching on a good man bringing good things out of his heart and an evil man bringing evil things out of his heart
Yep.
totally proves that it has nothing to do with this or this. I understand that we have the ability to be like, I like this or this, but what you choose is always going to be what it is based on what's on the inside of you.
It is. And most people in the world don't understand that how to be authentic on the inside because they've been taught their whole life to act the right way independent of how they feel, act the right dependent on what they think. Like these are the standards and the rules by which we're supposed to live in. And if you don't act this way, you're not the right way. So instead of learning what are those internal things in my biological, cognitive, experiential, and emotional being that is unhealthy, that's causing me to desire to do things that are unhealthy or unrighteous. And rather than changing those things, they just learn to be awesome actors. And you
Right.
can be an actor all your life, but you're going to end up with this cognitive dissonance within yourself, and then you're going to have problems.
And to be fair, like the authority figures that are teaching that don't know how to do it themselves. So how can
Hell
they
no, they
expect
don't.
anything different? But it's just, if we can get away from this whole idea of, I guess you don't have to condemn somebody to still say their action is wrong and in order to attempt at least to help them understand how to do it better. And when I think we get in, at least in the Christian community, especially this whole like condemnation and really tearing people down when they don't line up with whatever the 10 principles of your church is. Like you and I both know what it is to be an outcast in a church. And when you don't line up with their principles, you basically, it's like you get ghosted. It's
Right.
a sad existence. Like, I'm not saying that because I feel bad about it. I'm just saying it'd be like, it's just this sad existence that never was the intent. The intent was to be, I'm dealing with this. Anybody can anybody help me with this? But and to be real in that situation and say, I'm actually dealing with this. I'm okay that I'm dealing with this. I'm just trying to find some answer out there to help me become better.
Absolutely. And that becoming part, again, people don't get how do you become healthy? How do you become happy? How do you become peaceful? How do you become patient? How do you become loving? How do you become, caring, generous? That inner state of being for somebody that does it easily, it's part of who their inner being is. But the people who have difficulty with it, so if people would take care of their biology like we suggested, we're gonna get into in just a second. How do you become healthier cognitively?
Right.
So let's finish up with look at what our next slide is: becoming cognitively empowered. Be a seeker of truth. And I tell people all the time, to be a seeker of truth is to put your beliefs to the test. Be willing to seek out evidence based knowledge and be willing to question and criticize and try to prove your own beliefs false. And if you can prove your own false beliefs or beliefs false, then you can search for a new belief. But if you can't, it will strengthen your beliefs because you've already answered the criticisms and the critiques that are out there in that world. And I always say you will always recognize truth by the freedom it provides and the peace that is felt. So if you don't have peace towards somebody in any and every situation, there's something about your inner being that's unhealthy. And it still hasn't been healed yet. It hasn't been empowered yet. It hasn't become healthy biologically, or maybe you're emotionally getting triggered all the time. How do you strengthen your beliefs? And we just talked about this. If you believe something is true, then attempt to prove it false yourself. And this is putting yourself in a humble state of being to sit there and say, I might be wrong. And you attempt of your own accord to try to go prove that wrong. And then if you can't, because you intentionally and purposefully attempted to, then you've gone through the process that will strengthen your belief. And then transform knowledge and beliefs into wisdom. And when you transform what you know, which is evidence-based or provable truths, and your assumed truths or your beliefs into wisdom, it means putting it into practice in your daily life. How is what you believe serving your life well? Because if it doesn't make your life better and it make it more enjoyable and make it more peaceful and content, then it's not serving your life well. If it's creating stress, anxiety, depression, anger, bitterness, having thoughts of suicide, having thoughts of homicide, wanting to bring harm to others, wanting to bring harm to yourself, then your belief is not working for you. It's time to look for new beliefs. So again, put your beliefs that are positive for you into practice. Have conversations with people about these positive things that are making your life better, and show others what you know how to do. So many people are focused on the negative. So many people are focused on villainizing. So many people are focused on putting others down, raining down on negative people, focused on negative people, rather than focusing on how do you be more positive? How do you be more healthy? How do you seek out truths that's going to be beneficial to one another? Let's seek out answers together rather than villainizing the things that aren't the answers and the problems of the world. And so many people are so focused on the problems, they invite those problems into their own lives.
Sure. And then another question here from Jeff is, I know you, he says, Messenger, I know you've taken some criticism about your cure quotes for PTSD, but I was curious about what you might think about someone who got over PTSD on their own over time.
Well, I think it's awesome. I mean, I would say they had to have found truth to be able to do that. So whether it was that they went through treatment with a counselor or a therapist of some sort, whether they were able to process on their own and maybe they had enough skills internally within them that were healthy. Maybe they had a great support system and a bunch of great people around them that helped build them up and help them get over and deal with some of those things that were there. But I tell people, if you still get triggered by things, then you're not healed. You might be able to have coping skills to deal with it, but you're not fully healed. A truly healed person's never going to get triggered again. And that's part of the process of once you have this healthy framework of how you view yourself, how you view others, and truly understanding the inner self for your own being, but understanding the inner self of other beings, that's where that true freedom is going to come from. And a lot of people don't understand that if that's not there, then it's not true healing. It's just a coping skill. Coping skills are there to help us survive the things that are still plaguing us or affecting us in negative ways. And coping skills are great, but don't think that's the be all end all and it has to be that way the rest of your life. I'm free from all the things that I used to cope with. And it's because I've been given this truth and understanding our inner being better than everybody. I hope that answers this question. All right. Become accountable and responsible. And I define these things, and we did a teaching on accountability and responsibility. So if you haven't seen the Unplugged from Worldly Thinking series, I have one on accountability and responsibility. Patrick and I went through it for about an hour. It was really good. Look at that video, but I'll break it down slightly here too. Accountability is subjecting yourself to the explanation of your outward appearance or your actions, behaviors, choices, and decisions with the intent and purpose of providing insight and understanding to another. So many people think that when you are being accountable that you're trying to excuse your behavior, excuse what you did. No. The intention is not always known. So whether you're being accountable or you're trying to excuse, an outside person who is not understanding or looking at the intent is not going to see the difference. But when I explain myself and I give an accountability for myself, I don't care what other person judgment is. I don't care what other people think of me based on the accountability. I'm subjecting myself to the explanation of what I did, how I acted, how I behaved, so that people can have understanding and insight to that, not to excuse it, because I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need anybody to excuse me because I'm not placing value on the importance and the judgments of other imperfect human beings on this planet. Just not doing it.
Sure. And that the accountability thing goes back to what I was saying, like what it's supposed to be like, and what it's not like currently in the Christian community is I'm dealing with this, and here's what I'm feeling when I'm dealing with this, or here's the information I have around what's happening when I'm dealing with this. Anybody got an answer? Like, can anyone help me out? It's not this. I'm not excusing it. but it's also not an area to be like, I'm being accountable to get, oh, you better not, you got to stop doing that. And like that whole condemnation that comes with it.
Right, exactly, and that's what so many people are focused on is you got to feel bad for what you did, Patrick. You need to feel sorrow, and they're always looking to either shame or embarrass people to try to create positive behavior to get you to do the right thing, and that never works. You have to focus on giving people the skills and the things that they're missing in life. And once they have those skills and they have a healthier viewpoint and perspective for how they view themselves and others, then the change and the growth begins within people.
100%. Once I started to realize and view my own perfections in a positive light, that they were just kind of guidance markers of like, okay, here's the next step of what you need to work on. That's when change really started to happen. And I'm sure you can attest to this because you've known the kind of journey, but I was a huge perfectionist and nothing could be wrong in my life. Like everything that was wrong in my life was all stuffed down and hidden so no one else could see it.
Right, and you're forced to do two things. Either you stuff it and hide it from people, or you rationalize it and normalize it.
Yep.
No, anger is a normal thing in life. There's nothing wrong with being angry. Oh, anxiety is a normal part of life. There's nothing wrong with being anxious. And I'm like, yeah, those intense emotions, which we'll get into, can serve your life well in a life-threatening situation, but they do zero and add zero value to your life in a non-life-threatening situation, and they actually screw with your well-being.
Sure. Now I just learned to not give a shit. And it's like, yep, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm okay with
That is a
that.
poor way to explain it, Patrick.
Well,
It's
I'm
it's it's not placing value and importance on the viewpoints of other imperfect people. Not
sure.
not caring is not a good word for it.
Well,
You know
that's
what
the
I mean.
version.
Remember, when you're in a teaching mode, you can't say those things because they won't understand where you're coming from.
Fair. But yeah, so I learned to just not place value and like, this is what I'm dealing with, and I'm searching for an answer. But
Yeah.
while I'm searching for an answer, I'm still dealing with this.
Yeah,
And
and,
that's
and, and
okay.
it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. It's okay not to be okay in the moment, but you're searching for answers and you're searching for that truth.
And I was talking to somebody about that over the weekend here. It was like, guess what? You struggle with something. Welcome to the club. Join the other 7 billion people on this planet that are, struggling with something.
Right, exactly. I'm just responding to somebody in the text real quick, so apologize for the delay. People listening, you can fast forward a tiny bit.
That's all right. I think I know what it is.
Kids.
I remember being 19.
It's all good.
All right.
This will be my
Next.
last response to him in this.
Why waste time anymore, my friend?
Because I care about people. Even
Fair.
even that kid. All right, moving on. Taking ownership. Responsibility is taking ownership and authority for your outward appearance, which is your actions, behaviors, choices, decisions, expressions, without placing blame or fault on someone or something else. Rather, always be looking inwardly at your own inner being. Yes, people may have abused you. People may have neglected you. People may have mistreated you. People may have traumatized you in your life. If you don't own those things that resulted from that, you're going to be a victim all your life, and you're never going to heal, you're never going to grow, and you're not going to have a better sense of well-being to where you have peace and contentment in any and every situation. And when we get to experiential part, I'll explain how to heal, which is the cure.
Oh my God. I cannot wait to watch the comment section explode in
So
this video.
I'm so I'm becoming cognitively empowered. We welcome all criticisms, correction, arguments, adversity, stress, and trials with joy, because we know if we feel stress and adversity and conflict, it's something that lacks in our inner being. We don't blame other people because somebody hurt our feelings. We don't blame other people because somebody pissed us off. We don't blame somebody else because we felt anxious. We're like, I'm feeling these things because I don't have a healthy inner being that's ready to be able to process whatever negativity is going on the outside. Because if we do equip people, if we equip our children, if we equip our teenagers, if we equip our young adults to have a better sense of well-being, they're not going to be affected by the outside world. Sure, somebody can come kick your ass physically. They may physically beat you up. They may physically abuse you. They may sexually abuse you physically. But on the inside, what's going on cognitively, emotionally, experientially, doesn't have to have the same traumatic viewpoint. That's why we have soldiers that go overseas. They see the same things. They experience the same things. Not all of them come back with the same PTSD symptoms. Why? Because each of them has a different sense of well-being going into that moment. And if you set me into those environments, it would have zero effect on me cognitively, experientially, and emotionally because of how I view myself and how I view the world around me. And Patrick's learning the same things. He's almost 100% there in those ways as well.
Yeah, this is that welcoming all criticisms, what I was, and correction argument, all that list there is kind of what I was talking about, that whole guideposts of what we still need to work on. Like, I've really learned, I'll phrase it better this time, I've learned to look at my failures and say, cool, what can I learn next time? No matter what the failure, it's, I got pissed off in this moment. It can be something as I got pissed off this moment all the way down to made a mistake at work. What can I learn between now and then? I'm going to search internally and search for an answer so that doesn't happen next time. Or if it does happen, maybe I'm pissed off less. I don't really get pissed off anymore. So that's a poor.
No, but it happened at one time.
There was a point in time in my life where I was upset at everything and pissed off at myself when I couldn't get something right. And that's where that freedom comes in, is like, it's cool because you're going to search for the answer and you have a framework to search for the answer now. The answer's out there. You just haven't found it yet. That's all right. Who knows when it'll come? Could be next week. Could be next year. Could be 10 years.
Exactly.
You keep searching, you'll find it.
Absolutely. Truth is truth, regardless of where you find it. And then in James it said, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith, or your trust and confidence in something, produces perseverance, which is your ability to get through it and survive it. Let perseverance finish its work so that you are mature and complete, not lacking anything. And a lot of people run away from stuff. They isolate themselves from stuff. They avoid the trigger. And I'm not saying go keep subjecting yourself to something that keeps bothering you, but develop something on the inside so it no longer is affecting you. Because if it is, you're not having a sense of freedom and you're dependent on somebody else for your own well-being, which means they have to act or behave in a certain way for you to feel peace and contentment. And that's not well-being. That's not freedom.
Sure.
So let's talk about the experiential process of the heart. These are episodic memories of people, events, and experiences that are either positive, negative, or traumatic in their recollection. Unhealed prior memories will trigger when a similar current situation occurs and you relate the current situation with a prior negative or traumatic experience, and you feel the same intense emotions and have the same cognitive perceptions of the current person or event associated with the past unhealed one. And so, again, when you're getting triggered in the moment, it's because somebody said or done something that reminds you of the past that hasn't healed yet. And we're going to get into how do you heal the experiential process within your inner being. And there's only one way to do it. If you don't do it this way, it's just a coping skill. So how do we do that? Healing starts with understanding. Understand that the heart, or the inner being of a person, determines the outward behavior. And this is both for yourself and others. It cannot ever be any different. So whatever's going on in the moment, cognitively, biologically, experientially, emotionally, could not be any different in that moment of time. Couldn't be. Stop wishing that it was. Understanding and having that understanding of the inner being dictating the outer being leads to empathy, which is your ability to perceive the world through another person's viewpoint or through their heart. You're not trying to put yourself in their situation and figure out, hey, if I was in their situation, this is what I would do. You're trying to understand what's going on biologically, cognitively, experientially, and emotionally within that person. So you're viewing them on the inner nature rather than the outward thing that they're doing. Understanding also leads to humility. You realize if you were the other person, your heart and outward appearance would have been exactly the same as theirs in that moment in time. And when you can do that, you stop condemning people and you start having empathy and understanding for people. You don't say what they're doing is right. You don't say what they're doing is okay if they're behaving poorly or doing horrific things. But because you have that empathy for them, you don't villainize them and you don't hate them and you don't feel bitterness and resentment toward them. Because empathy and humility allows true forgiveness, which means letting go or no longer feeling bitterness or resentment towards yourself or others because that empathy and that humility is authentic within you. So if you can't forgive people, which is letting go of the bitterness and letting go of the resentment and understanding it couldn't be any different, nor desiring it for it to be any different, that's when you can actually get to healing. And you no longer desire the past to be any different for self or others because you realize and accept the past was inevitable. Our past is inevitable. Our present is inevitable. And the future events, all of them that will occur, are inevitable. Because the cognitive, biological, experiential, and emotional processes will dictate how people act and behave, how people choose and decide, and how they express themselves. And they are what they are in those moments and couldn't be any different in that moment, can only be different in the future with new experiences, new knowledge, new belief systems, healthier biology. It's all going to affect themselves. That's why we partner with our destiny by changing ourselves inwardly so that in the future things can have a different outcome for us.
Right. And I think just bouncing off like the episodic memories thing, like one skill I kind of learned to help along that process is really when I would get triggered is understand that the situation you're currently in is totally different than the one you faced before. It's not the same situation. Your just own internal processes are telling you it's the same situation. And when I could realize that, it began helping me understand, okay, this is a different situation. I can think and reason about this differently at a later time. So that was just another little skill that I picked up along the way of as far as processing through those situations when I got triggered, and then going back and reflecting and going through, can't be different, heart determines, like everything we just listed here.
Absolutely. And now forgiveness then provides the healing. The heart heals forever when authentic forgiveness occurs towards someone or something. So when you have that empathy and you have that forgiveness and you have that humility, both for yourself and for other people, you will heal. You'll stop getting triggered by things because you'll realize those things couldn't be any different. And it's when we have those perceptions, it's not that somebody did something horrific, is what does that mean? Well, it means it can happen again, and it means that it was wrong, and it means that those people are monsters, and it means that like all these other judgments and things that we throw into it are the things that work up our anxiety, our anger, our bitterness, our resentment, rather going, it couldn't be any different. That was not okay what they did, but I'm not going to allow it to consume me because I realize if I was them, I would have done exactly what they do. Thank God that my life didn't go that way for whatever went on with them biologically, cognitively, experientially, and emotionally in their lives that made them that way. And again, it's not taking away their responsibility because we just talked about accountability and responsibility, but it does sit there and say, I'm not going to allow what they say and do, don't say and don't do, to affect me in a negative way because of their poor behavior or actions.
You don't need the negative emotion, and we'll get into emotions.
No, you're right. You don't need a negative emotion to
Emotion.
validate or justify that what they did was wrong. I don't have to be angry with them to know what they did was unhealthy, to know what they did is wrong. I can say, you behaved poorly in that moment. I realize it couldn't be any different, but guess what? Because you're going around raping people, murdering people, molesting kids, we need to lock you up until these things no longer are going on because of the unhealthiness that's within you. So I have no
Right.
problem with our justice system other than how it villainizes people who basically, because I always say victims create victims. Obviously, something very unhealthy and bad happened within one's life for one person to do such horrific things to begin with. And people always think, oh, nope, it's about choice. They knew right and wrong. Right and wrong doesn't matter when people are angry, bitter, hateful, resentful, want to burn down the world because life's gone so wrong and they had an inability to cope with it in a healthy way.
Right. How many times when we see like the school shootings and the serial killers, we come to find out, guess what? They were bullied as a kid, or they're getting bullied currently in the school that they just shot up. How heavy does that have to, like? I think a lot of times we want to play judge, jury, and executioner because they better not get away with it. Like then they'll get away with it. It's like I'll tell you what, that person has to live every day with that. If they don't, like, I know sometimes serial killers end up committing suicide. If they don't commit suicide, They have to live every day with what their actions were. Beyond that, beyond any of the actions they took, they've had to live every day with the inability to cope with the pains and triggers that have triggered them. How miserable is that existence? That's a sad existence. And that's what I learned to change my perspective. I used to be there. It's like, no, they have to pay a price. They have to, there has to be justice. And it's like, there already is justice. That person has to live like that. And that's a miserable existence. Thank the Lord that I don't have to live that existence because it's terrible. And that's how like me and John have learned to view people and understand that people don't get away with things. They still have to live with themselves. And
I know.
even if
That's a great point because there's so many people in the world that think that people, if they don't get punished or they don't have a consequence, that they're getting away with it. But people who do horrific and wrong things can't run away from themselves.
right,
They're still confined within that way of thinking and reasoning and behaving and believing. And I'm telling you, it's not fun for them. It's miserable for them.
right. And
They're consumed by those intense emotions and negative worldviews and viewpoints of life. It's not enjoyable for them. And yeah, they may be burning down the world around them, like I think the majority of the world burns down the world around itself. But for them, they're doing it in just very horrific ways.
right. And I mean, there is something to be said about, I know there's some, I think they've done studies on certain serial killers where there's something in their brain that they don't have the ability to process right and wrong like the rest of us do. Still got to be a miserable existence, not being able to process right and wrong the way everybody else does and being viewed as the weird kid.
Right. Absolutely. And now we talked about things when we talked about things being healthy and unhealthy, normal and abnormal, and functional and dysfunctional, and that those are very three distinct sets of ways of viewing things. Like you can be abnormal and healthy, and I think that most quote healthier people are abnormal because they don't fit within the norms of society. The norms of
Right.
society is becoming very unhealthy. At the same time, you can have abnormalities and still be functional, and you can have unhealthiness and still be functional. I mean, we talk about functional drug addicts, functional alcoholics. You know, they function in the roles that they do, but it doesn't mean that they're normal or abnormal. It doesn't mean that they're healthy or unhealthy. They're just functional in that moment. So when looking at abnormal and normal, functional and dysfunctional, and healthy and unhealthy, they're three different things. The most important of those group of things to me is healthy or unhealthy. Healthy, that which serves your life well and positive and having peace and contentment in any and every situation, versus that which does not, which I would say is unhealthy in its nature.
Right.
I would say if you're feeling anxiety, stress constantly, depression constantly, suicidal ideation, anger, you're getting triggered, you're having all these things that are going on mentally, biologically within your inner being, that's unhealthy. It's not serving your life well. It's not enjoyable. There's so many people that try to normalize that which is unhealthy, and you got to stop doing that. It's just leading to there's not answers, and I'm just going to normalize this because I can't find an answer for it.
Hmm. I'm just responding to something.
All right, I'm going to move on to the emotional processes. I'll respond to you in a second, Jeff. I just want to get through these things first. Primary emotions are basically the foundational emotions within us. They're the least intense, and these are five emotions that you will always feel. First one, pleasure, surprise, sadness, fear, and disgust. Those are your five primary emotions. Every other emotion that you feel originated from one of these five. Pleasure, human beings are pleasure seeking individuals. We usually draw to what feels good and we attempt to avoid what is creating sadness, fear, or disgust. Surprise is that elated sense of excitement about something. Sadness is hurt or feeling sad or sorrow over something. And then our fear is our worry or lack of known that's going to go on. And our disgust is something that we feel disdain or negative towards in those things. Sadness, fear, and disgust, the secondary emotions that escalate from these are the things that impair our lives and only benefit our lives in a life-threatening situation. And I will talk about that in a second. So secondary emotions are emotions that escalate from the primary ones and are more intense in nature. Secondary emotions that escalate from sadness, fear, or disgust are useful only in life-threatening situations, but the world has learned to normalize them in life and non-life-threatening situations and in households they cause misery and discontent. As these secondary emotions intensify, it impacts our ability to think and reason in those specific moments. And what we know in psychology is as our emotions start to intensify in the limbic system or the midbrain, our ability to think and reason gets blocked off in our prefrontal cortex. So we could do perhaps easier or more known things better. Like people who are in sports and they get intense emotions, they can do what they know how to do very well. However, if it's like a rookie and he's less experienced and he becomes intense, he's going to be able to have an inability and his performance is actually going to go down. So again, in the moment, why it blocks off the prefrontal cortex, because in a life-threatening situation, you don't want to be thinking and reasoning through something like, hey, saber-toothed tiger is coming over the hill. Gee, I wonder if he's hungry. Is he looking at me? No, you want to be looking for something to combat him, like a rock or a stick or a weapon, or you're running and climbing up a tree or running inside the house or running inside the cave. So again, in life-threatening situations, we don't want our prefrontal cortex taking over where we're pondering the outcome. We want to react instinctively for survival purposes. So how do we become emotionally peaceful? Become aware of your emotions, which means being able to identify them. What do we feel sad about? When are we feeling sad? What are we feeling disgust about? Why are we feeling disgust? What are we feeling fear about? What are we worried about? And if you can be more open to feeling these primary emotions, you won't allow them to escalate or intensify, like getting into, now I'm frustrated, now I'm annoyed, well, now I'm angry with you, well, now I'm enraged with you. And that intensity as it builds up blocks off your ability to think and reason. It will not serve you well in a non-life-threatening situation. Same thing for sadness. If it gets into sorrow, and then from sorrow it escalates into feeling depressed, and then from depressed you get into despair. As those things intensify, it impairs your ability to function. And same thing with fear growing into anxiety or embarrassment or shame or regret or the other things that it does. Disgust escalating into anger. And a lot of people love anger because anger makes people feel powerful. They feel strong. They feel like nobody can mess with me because it's boosting your adrenaline, it's boosting your cortisol, and it's repressing your fear sensors. So people love anger. They love to sit there and get that anger going because then they feel powerful and strong, like they can take on the world. And really, they just became a raging Hulk that can't think or reason in the moment, and they act and behave poorly in a non-life-threatening situation by yelling, screaming, hitting, hurting, smashing, whatever. When undesired secondary emotions are felt, attempt to focus on and feel your primary one that escalated from. So let's say I start to get annoyed or I get frustrated. I need to go, okay, what am I dealing with here? Am I hurt or sad? Am I feeling fear or worry? Or am I feeling disgusted by what somebody has done or what I'm viewing and observing? And then if I get down to feeling, okay, this one escalated from sad, I got my feelings hurt. Why did I get my feelings hurt? And it's not somebody else's fault. It's like, why am I placing value on what was said or done, not said or not done, that's causing this hurt within me? And if we learn to reprocess cognitively while we're in those primary emotions, when we can still think and reason well, then we're not letting them, one, escalate into more intense secondary emotions. And number two, we learn to become more comfortable and more understanding for our own sense of sadness and hurt. Like, I'm okay hurting. I'm okay being sad. I want to understand what my thinking and reasoning is that's causing this. What's my perception and viewpoint of this situation or this person that's going on that's creating my hurt or causing me to feel fear or worry or causing me to feel disgust towards something. And if I don't want to change how I think and reason, I'm not going to change how I feel. But it's always our perception that creates our emotions.
Right. And I know I remember that when I first started doing this, where I started with this is even beyond like going into the whole unpacking, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling this? It was really becoming okay feeling sad and becoming okay feeling disgusted. Like I would come home and I would sit and well, the way I describe it is kind of emo in a sense, but it helped me. I would come home, I would go to my room, shut the door, and I would just sit there in silence for an hour and just kind of relive the situation and be like, I felt sad here and I'm okay feeling sad. And so that's where it sort of started, is just really becoming aware of those emotions, like we said, and learn to be okay feeling those. And it takes time. It's more difficult for some people than it is for others, but for me, it was really just being okay, feeling not okay, because that was a huge thing for me. Is like I believed I had to feel okay and 100% and put on this like perfect image to the world the whole time. So when I really took the time to just be like, I feel sad and that's okay, that's when I became at peace. And then I could move on into, I feel sad, that's okay. Why do I feel sad? What am I missing? What am I placing value on? What should I be placing value on? That's how that process went for me.
Absolutely. Inwardly reflect to better understand what you may be lacking or not understanding that is causing the undesired primary emotion to be felt, such as unhealthy beliefs and perception of yourself and others. Realize that human beings are unique, pleasure seeking individuals. They will often draw to what feels good and avoid what does not. And again, it's learning to empathize, not just for yourself, but empathizing for others for how they're being affected. You know, a lot of people, like, if somebody cancels on you after making plans, and people get so upset when people cancel, like, oh, I can't believe they would do that. That's the third time or second time they've canceled on me. Well, obviously something's going on in that person's life, on the inside of them and in the environment that they're in and their ability to cope and process with it, that's dictated that choice or decision to be made. And if you were them, you would have made the exact same one. The thing is you try to put yourself in their shoes with your thinking and reasoning, your feelings and thoughts, rather than trying to empathize and understand what's causing theirs. And so many people lack empathy, and it's that lack of empathy that causes strains in between interpersonal and intimate relationships.
Yep.
Discover pleasure in serving others authentically. And what I mean by serving others are these things: change the way you perceive people, stop believing that somebody will take advantage of you. Just be you. If you're going to be something independent of what other people do, whether they appreciate it or not, whether they reciprocate or not. You do what you do independent of what other people do, and you'll never be disappointed. Stop desiring praise from others for your good deeds. You know, stop wanting accolades. Either you have a sense of self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence, or you don't. And if you don't, you're dependent on other people. Again, you got to get out of that framework. You got to like who you are. You got to like who you're becoming, and you got to like what you're doing with your life in regard to those things. Realizing that serving others glorifies the Father every time. So believing in God and knowing that God is the originator of all healthy ways of being, and he passed on that truth through Jesus, and Jesus passed on that truth through his teachings, and we've gained some of those from his teachings or from our own insights in understanding the world, that when you do healthy things, it's bringing health and glory to that which is perfect. And that's what we're desiring to become, is perfect, even in the midst of not being. Recognize that relationships are more important than things or fleshly desires. And so many people are so caught up on their own pleasure that they don't value the nature of relationship with people. They would rather just, I'm just going to hang out with people who agree with me because that makes my life easier. Well, you're never going to grow and you're never going to learn if you don't put your own thoughts and beliefs to the test and be challenged by people that have difference in beliefs and opinions than you do. You'll never be able to put your own to the test unless you're willing to put your thoughts and your beliefs and yours there. Because if you're always holding on to somebody else's, like, well, I've read this and this is what this expert says, and I've read this and this is what this expert says. Well, what is it that you think? What is it that you believe, and why? Why do you hold that to be truth? Because if it isn't because it makes your life better, then you're holding on to it for the wrong reason. Life is not about being right. Life is about enjoying life. And that includes interpersonal relationships with other human beings. So if that's not your focus, you're going to have a very miserable, lonely existence come the end of your life.
Real quick, is your concept of the Father the same as a concept of perfection or some kind of ideal?
You could call it that. You know, I just believe that I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that that the Homo sapiens were created by something outside of this planet. That's what I believe to be true based on putting my beliefs to the test. That there was an original creator, that he gave us dominion over this planet, and that we're ruling over it very poorly, and we really don't understand ourselves enough to be able to understand God. And people sit there and follow these different religious texts that they have no concept and understanding of who they are as human beings. and they just sit there and mirror and parrot what they've read, and they think they understand what it means, and they've created these mythological viewpoints of God and these mythological viewpoints of Jesus and these mythological viewpoints of Allah and these mythological viewpoints of Krishna and all these other things within religion that are unhealthy. Rather than understanding we are put here to have dominion and to have a relationship with one another in a healthy way. And until we learn to do that, we're all going to have a very miserable existence here on planet Earth. So because I have a knowledge of this, I'm trying to put out truth in a way that sits there and says, how do we sit there and build these things in a healthy way? And if you are reading a Christian Bible, I don't want you to be reading it in the way that your pastor's teaching you, because he's bringing misery and death upon you in the way that he interprets the scripture. And I'm trying to bring freedom and life. So when Jeff says, is it the same thing as a perfection of some kind of ideal? Yeah, it's an ideal of peace, an ideal of contentment, an ideal of joy, an ideal of love, an ideal of generosity, of caring, of giving, of being kind to one another. And anything that interferes with those things, we should oppose. And that we should sit there and stand up against. Even if it hurts somebody's feelings, we're going to stand up against it because it's not truth and it's not healthiness. So that's my answer to that question. So all things are possible. When you become biologically healthy, cognitively empowered, experientially healed, emotionally peaceful, and spiritually wise within your heart or your inner being, then and only thing are all things possible to fulfill the destiny that the Father desires for you. In this, you have been chosen. So I say this because people think, oh, well, God chooses you or doesn't choose you, like a Calvinist would think, or, oh, I get to have free choice in becoming what I become. But if you're not given truth, if you're not giving healthy ideas and healthy concepts for how to become a better version for yourself, well, then you're still stuck within the confines of what you have been given or not given. And everything that I've worked with Patrick over the last 3 years is how do you become a healthier version of yourself? I had been doing it up to that point for about 10 years. So I was way ahead of the game. I had learned how to do this myself because of the truths that were given to me about understanding the inner being. And that's why I've talked about this human response model of our biological processes, our cognitive processes, our experiential and our emotional, and all those determinants, and how do you heal and repair and make those things more healthy and positive in their nature. Because if you focus on yourself on the inside, the outside becomes perfected as well. Because healthy people don't want to harm other people. Healthy people don't want to be mean or cruel. Healthy people don't want to pick on people. Healthy people don't want to make fun of people. They just don't. Because they have a true empathetic lens and understand people are doing what they do because that's what they know how to do. That's what they biologically can do. That's what they experientially have the ability to process in that moment. Or that's emotionally how they feel, and it couldn't be any different in that moment in time. And when people understand these truths and they learn to change and they learn to perfect themselves and they learn to partner with themselves to become the experts for their lives, then and only then can the future be different for them in those experiential moments.
I would say also when you learn to reflect on yourself and focus on yourself solely, it removes the, I guess, yoke of slavery that I need everybody else in my life to tell me I'm great or build me up. And don't misunderstand. Like, we do need people in our lives. It's not a go be a hermit. We do need to seek out teachers and people who can teach us something we don't know. But it removes that burden of your life to need people. You can be you. You can be self-confident. You can do what you are called to do, whatever that may be, regardless of anybody else.
Yep, absolutely.
And you stop, like, the biggest takeaway for me has always been I stopped blaming others for how I was feeling, and I took 100% responsibility for any and all actions I do, and that set me free from the world.
Yeah, and it's once you get it, and once you start to apply it, once you start to see those changes go on within you, then you truly get it, and you go like, why didn't I figure out this before? Well, you didn't figure it out before because it wasn't given to you.
Right?
And then you have that humility to go, I can learn from anybody. I can be challenged and tested by anybody. I'm willing to be corrected by anybody. I'm searching truth. So, of course, I want to hear what somebody has to say because I want to understand the perception and the reasons they have for doing what they do. And in that, you make the world your teacher. Rather than saying, oh, I'm going to pick this guru or this author or this authority figure or this cool person on YouTube or that cool person or popular person, I go, the world's my teacher. I'm going to learn from anybody and everything. If somebody says I lack something, I'm going to go, what do you think I lack? I'm curious to hear that. And then I'm going to put it to the test. I'm just not going to mindlessly accept things because people are imperfect. So you got to put them to test. If you believe something's true, try to prove it false. If you have that mentality, you have a better ability to get to truth. So in Ephesians it says, in him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will, in order that we, who were the first to put our hope in Jesus, might be for the praise of his glory. And you were also included in Jesus when you heard the message of truth, the gospel of salvation, and you believed and were marked in him with a seal, the promised Holy Spirit. Again, people don't understand what message of truth means. They don't understand what gospel of your salvation. The gospel of salvation is the good news of being free from the things that make your life miserable. So if you're marked with a seal, you're marked with a seal of truth, the promised Holy Spirit, which is the inner state of being that's healthy and whole in its nature and being. That's what it takes to become and achieve these things. Destiny is just what we live out. People who believe that free will or even compatibilism is true don't understand human behavior. Human behavior is this. We live lives of destiny. Destiny is an inevitable outcome based on our inner being. It's an inevitable outcome of hard determinism. If you learn to partner with your destiny, you learn to focus on the inner determinants that make you you and make others them. And when you focus on the determinants rather than the outward actions, behaviors, choices, decisions that are dictated from the determinants, you will become a healthier individual. You'll better understand yourself. You'll better understand others. You'll have better relationships. You'll have better interactions. You'll have a better life. And you'll learn to find peace and contentment in any and every situation. Was there any other questions?
Nope. Jeff was just like, he's like, I got to say, I admire you both. You're both quite soothing to listen to, and I agree with a lot of what you say. So rather than type out what I was going to say to you, I was just say, well, we appreciate that, Jeff, and we're glad you took the time to show up and, spend like an hour and 15 minutes of your life with learning and growing from us, or at least being willing to listen.
Yeah.
That's what starts. If you are at least willing to listen to someone else, you can learn and grow and become a healthier version. Because how do you know what you don't know?
Sorry, I'm laughing at his question, not you.
No, yeah. Does that mean I can't give people crap anymore? You can absolutely still give people crap.
No. He's like, what if my determinants are telling me certain people to stop being assholes?
Oh, I didn't see that one.
No, I mean, that's the thing is like, yeah, like telling people to stop behaving poorly would be just a different way to word it. But yeah, people who we quote deem are doing the wrong thing or unhealthy things are being assholes. But at the same time, can you empathize with an asshole? Can you go, man, it must really suck that person is an asshole and behaving like an asshole because that person has an inability not to do those things. Something in their past, in their toddlerhood, their childhood, their adolescence made them what they are, and that's what they become. And it couldn't have been any different because nothing positive outweighed the things that were negative in that person's life. And It's not about condoning what they do. Yeah, they're still assholes. And if they're doing things that are criminal or harmful to society and nature, yes, we have to lock them up. But we should be rehabilitating people, not punishing and condemning people. That's just my viewpoint. And thank you, Jeff, for the kind words. I mean, I've spoke with you before, I think, on one of the channels briefly. You asked some questions, I answered your questions, and it was really good. I've had several conversations with your brother, and I've enjoyed those conversations with him and look forward to more future conversations with him. Yeah, like the stuff that people think that we're out, proselytizing, trying to, create a cult or trying to create, followers of Christian God. And that's never been our intent. We're just helping people from a theistic view unplug from mainstream modern day Christianity in a healthy way. And because we both came from Christianity, we think these are the things that we're taught in the Bibles in healthy ways. And we've rebutted and refuted the things that we know are unhealthy about biblical writings or scripture. So, definitely thank you for hanging out. I think this is the end. Let's say, well, if you believe these truths, then the Spirit is within you. If not, the truth remain hidden. Yep. Yeah. The person without Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit. Again, people who aren't healthy don't understand healthy things. People who don't have a healthy state of being have difficulty understanding that it's even possible to have. And I know I did as well. So I understand why they reject what they don't understand. But if they don't learn to be open to it, they're never going to get it.
Right.
And Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than these." So you got Jesus, who is, quote, the firstborn son of God, saying, "They will do even greater things than what I've done because I am going to the Father." So he exited planet Earth and told us we would do even greater things than him. Why do people keep thinking that they're always going to suck and always going to have a difficult time doing? Hey, baby, we're almost done.
Okay. I didn't know if you needed a drink.
Got one right now, but thank you. And you got me some tacos.
All your.
All right, my Taco Tuesday has arrived.
Taco Tuesday.
All right, let's
I
see.
just want to bounce off real fast
Sure.
that theistic viewpoint that we take. Because, I know.
Sorry, Jeff said he wants peer-reviewed journals. Messenger.
Yeah, no, I saw that. It was funny. I think what people got to remember, like you said, we come from a Christian background, and that's when all these presentations started and everything that we went through. We were still involved in Christian communities. We were still in churches, and we were also originally involved in some Christian communities here on YouTube. So we put these together in order to go to them first, and then no one wanted to hear it there. So eventually John migrated over to the atheistic community. So yes, these come from a theistic viewpoint because that's our background. That's what we were given.
But I'm trying to help people become healthier versions of themselves. I don't care what their belief system is.
100%.
Their worldview is what it is because that's the way life's gone for them. And I want them to hold to the mainstream modern day version of Christianity any more than I hold myself to it, because I don't.
Sure.
But I'll say this: in the atheist and agnostic community, they're more open in most cases. Now, atheist rationale, I would say, is just as closed-minded as the Christian communities that we've been around. The same negative. I don't believe it because I don't have evidence-based stuff. Well, it's the same thing when people say, "Well, I can't believe anything you say about change because it's not in the Bible." People have very ignorant and dogmatic views of stuff. They're never going to get anywhere.
Sure.
They're always going to be limited, and just because something's peer reviewed doesn't make it truth. And I stated that in my debate with them. If you don't understand how to differentiate and how to sit there and understand, research based things by looking at t-scores and looking at variance and looking at standard deviations and looking at the data within articles, you're not going to know the reliability and the validity of the research that was even done that you're reading about. You're just going to be parroting it because it sounds good, and you have no clue if there's author bias, subject bias within those peer-reviewed articles. So again, don't think that because it's peer-reviewed that it's truth or science or evidence-based. It's not always that way. And if you took a master's level research course, you'd know that because they'll teach you.
Right.
So there's my little thing for TRA if he happens. The atheist rationale if he pops on. So anyway. and I know you were kidding, Jeff. So all is cool. Let's see. Do we got any more? Let me get through these slides and then we'll wrap up. All things are possible when you believe in your heart. Again, the things that you believe dictate what you are on the outside. If you don't believe that the inside or your inner being determines how you act and behave, how you choose and decide, then you're going to believe in the free will myth or a compatibilistic view of the world, and you're always going to struggle because you're not changing you. You're trying to change everything around you, or you're just trying to act the right way rather than become the right way. So, thanks for all who hear this. Again, if you have questions and you weren't in the live stream and you're watching on replay, please leave your comments below. Patrick and I will answer them. I'm going to read his comments here real quick. That would be an awesome conversation. We should have, Jeff, you and I should, if you have Zoom, we should have a Zoom conversation, either me and you, or me, you and Patrick, or me, you, Jay and Patrick, where we get together and just talk and converse, whether it be privately or if you want to do it on a live stream, doesn't matter, but would love to have a conversation with you. I think you're a reasonable person. I think you're a truth seeker, just like we are. So thank you for hanging out in the chat. Thank you for being open-minded. Thank you for the kind comments. And I'll let Patrick close out with whatever he wants to say, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that last part about there might be something happening between a search for transcendental origin for meaning along with pragmatic examination of psychology and how it can be applied to human, just my limited understanding of psychology and kind of human development. It's definitely, I like that idea that, there's something more to ourselves that we just haven't found yet. And I think that might be the point you're making. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, to wrap up this, I'm glad we got through the heart. I'm glad we took 3 parts to do it this time. It's what this presentation needed. I look forward to future conversations with Jeff and his brother Jay. And yeah, thank you everybody for stopping by for the time that we've done these presentations. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or John. We will answer them at our soonest availability. And that's pretty much it. I look forward to going forward with rehashing this whole Secrets of the Kingdom uh, series.
Awesome. And again, peace, love, and blessings to all who have ears to hear and eyes to see. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.
See you later.